Dr. Castleberry back with our next segment of the Week 2 video lecture series, talking about mass media, talking about communication, covering the spectrum, looking at a number of topics. And one of the through-line discussion items in Week 2 has been commentary, sub-commentary on terms, on theoretical terms, on why we discuss terms and theory and what's the significance there. And it got me thinking about why it is essential to highlight these items. And a recent book that I've come across, it's not integrated into our curriculum yet in the major, but please understand, myself, others, we're on the lookout. We're always scoping the landscape, the mediascape, for updated tools and resources that are going to take our students to the next level. They're going to be at the front of the conversational lines, and ways that help us better prepare and just gain the right kinds of knowledge bases. A book that I've been sampling, and I finally found the right place for it, will in the near future pull the trigger on this one, is Keywords for Media Studies. It's all in the title, right? From Laurie Ouellette and Jonathan Gray, a couple of well-known, highly respected scholars that, like the Communication, Media, and Ethics degree program at MacU, straddle that line between communication studies in the traditional sense and media studies is in an evolving sense, all right? So keywords in mass media, or keywords for media studies, a book that we'll be exploring in curriculum within the next year. I know as early as fall 2020, but where it lands and how beyond that, some of you may be a part of that, and we're always looking for new and additional works. No book is just casually thrown into a class. We take a lot of time and effort to think strategically, to plan how and why and if a book matters. So hopefully these readings have stood out to you in some ways. As the sun begins to set over my face here, it's an omen, right? That this conversation has gone on as long as it has. And we really had to kind of push the series into a single day direction. I love being able to spread it out over multiple days. It brings complications to try to address all of the content in a single day. I've done it both ways, and I all of that is secondary. But I want to finish up some questions from Savannah relating to the readings. Berger's Media and Society, Chapter 2, Savannah writes, what is the importance of having both print and electronic media? Why do you feel they are still producing print media since everything is censored electronically now? Oh, I meant to grab like a prop, a visual aid or two to make my point, but the funny irony here, I'm surrounded by props, right? I have this conversation quite often with another fellow kind of media advocate or cinephile or fan of physical media in particular. And book people will advocate this. You'll hear book people talk about this hard and heavy, like the need, the desire, the enjoyment of the physical thing in your hands, and I can respect that. I even have talked about at the beginning of my lecture series how I'm having to do it differently now that I'm in a kind of quarantine state, going kind of paperless. Normally in the past, I've printed out notes of handwritten comments, and here I'm maybe making a couple of bullet points, but really just kind of speaking, right? Giving myself time to think about it, but then speaking on topics from memory and experience and just processing these inquiries. And it's different. That's the bottom line, is it's different. There are different mass mediums, and this is just like some people prefer television over film. Well, some people, prefer reading on a tablet instead of out of a book. Or is it what's about practicality, or maybe about cost? Well, we're at a time where fewer things are being shipped around the country. So maybe it's that practical time to pick up an ebook. But then there's that question of, do I really read the ebook if I have it versus if I have the physical copy of the book? Do I read the physical copy of the book? I don't. Where does it fall, right? So I'm traditionally, I'm a physical media kind of person, but you know what? There are signs of evolution too, right? There are signs of transformation, and adaptation might be the best word, because I have, I used to love a good newspaper. I did, and there came a time where it became very tedious. Certainly became a little expensive to acquire, physical newspapers, and then just that natural process of now, and majority of my news I'm reading on a smartphone. I'm not even visiting websites anymore. Like clicking through, on a computer, desktop, laptop, whatever. It's that's too slow. I'm smartphoning all of this. And what does that mean? Well, it's a sign of shift. It's a sign of change. It's a sign of technological process. But when it comes to longer intellectual things, works, I still want the book in my hand. I still want to process it in that way. But then there's this other thing, right? About other kinds of media, other types of media. Let's talk about television and film for a minute. How many of you all have ever wanted to see a film? You put it in your queue, or you saved it for later in a streaming service, and then by the time you got around to it, it had disappeared, right? And when this happens, like frustration or anxiety or just wasting time, or hey, maybe I was never going to see it anyway. But for those of us that will want to revisit texts, that's frustrating. Or there's a case study of people that bought certain, let's say they were films online in the iTunes store. This is a recent case study in the last year and a half. They bought movies that they owned in iTunes. Well, then the license expired between iTunes and the film producer, right? The production company, a distributor. And boop, the movies disappeared, right? And there was no, okay, and now we'll give you your refund. There was we no longer support that media. And there's this big class action lawsuit or something like that. And you don't want to get mixed up in that kind of thing. But the idea of what are we, cause and effect, that's been our through line, our theme. Because of X, we have Y effect. One result of the digital age and all of these, download this and download that, and stream this and stream that, is you're no longer acquiring the physical media, ephemera content. And so then you're limiting, in some ways, your ability to access it anytime you want, give or take, versus the previous ways you could access it, give or take, whenever you want it, right? In the comfort of your own home, using your own devices, that sort of thing. So that's one way to think about the value that print media has, is you still get to have it. It doesn't go away from you, so you can still access it later. Versus convenience, I'm downsizing. Oh, I don't want to have a collection. Oh, I don't want to, I just want to rent. I don't want to pay for the whole thing, and so on. We can think about it that way. Okay, Stuart Hall's encoding and decoding. One point that stood out for me is for us as viewers to not be influenced by the encoder's ideologies. How do we decode the message effectively but still keep our personal views out of it? I think it's his middle ground, right? Stuart Hall, what he refers to as that middle ground of decoding, the negotiated meaning of a given message. To negotiate it, to understand what its intent is, to still retain your thoughts and values amidst that negotiated reception of information. Understanding Stuart Hall's encoding and decoding, the companion essay out of the anthology book. After reading this essay, I understood decoding and encoding a lot better. Oh, good, that's the purpose of the essay. But one term that did stand out was intertextuality. Could you explain that section and how that goes along with encoding and decoding? Let me break down intertextuality for us quickly. I believe I referenced it in week 1. It's lost in the archives of conversation, but Intertextuality, so this would be a reference within a text that's about another text, okay? And so we encounter these all the time. We just either know or we don't know when we see it. So for example, let's think about the parody film, right? Do you know what a parody is, everyone? A parody is like those films, they're intended to be comedies. They're overtly referencing other older movies, typically of a specific set genre. Think about what's called Scary Movie. The Scary Movie franchise is overtly referencing the Scream franchise. The Naked Gun franchise from the 1990s is referencing the not only many cop films and cop TV shows and the kind of the police detective genre itself, but many other kinds of broad comedic references in popular culture history. But it's also referencing, there was a TV series called From the Files of Police Squad, or Police Squad, or whatever it was, and it kind of carried something of that same veins. So it's like, it's references intentionally, like a text about a text. Or let's think about this, and many of you are familiar, you've talked about, even written about the Marvel, right? The Marvel adaptations that we're seeing in film, on television, and so on. And when these series or films aren't just doing like their own thing with their own characters, but they're doing this business where they start to kind of bend and bleed over into one another, right? There's an overlap occurring. These are intertextual references. It's a reference to another text within a text. And not only that, they're referencing other, mass mediums and their own other histories in the print medium, right? The comic book medium. So these are intertextual references. So when the fans, you go to maybe like opening night, and the fans are a lot more engaged than if you went, 2 months after a film has been playing. The fans are like, ha, 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 and clapping and all this kind of stuff, because they're getting these quote unquote inside references to other types of media and other types of kind of the histories of these characters and stuff. That's a different, unique kind of experience. And it gives us a kind of pleasure, but it also expands the horizon of the text, right? So it's not just about an open close story any longer. It's about some kind of like continuous history that's maybe constantly rewriting itself or whatever. And it's playful, and it can be aesthetically pleasing to some. It's alienating to others. I'm trying to think, these shows or film series that get so bogged down in their own continuities that like you can't approach it because it's so far into some pre-established lineage of planning and thinking and other texts and all that. And a lot of people, they don't want that. They're like, I don't want to read 7 novels and 3 TV series to get a backstory on how I should appreciate this one movie. Some of the Transformers movies suffered from this, I think, but that's an idea of the KISS model versus being complex, right? Keep it simple versus how audience thirst for complex narrative and storytelling. Okay, really quick, Quenisha. Media and society critical perspective. What effect do you think media has on our life? Many, lots of effects, you name it. Do you think that children today consume more media than they should? Many children do. We should be more alerted to it. We should find more active habits that try to limit that or curtail some of the excess there. I think parents, guardians, whoever should definitely be trying harder to screen that in advance and make informed decisions and try to protect maybe like the sort of innocence of childhood. I think that's important. I think that's something lost in culture right now. I do. I'd advocate for that. It's a fine line, right? And I'll walk it daily, and I think about it as a media person, as a media educator, as a media scholar. I think about these things. And there are flags, and the problem is media producers aren't stopping. It's not their prerogative to care, quote unquote, unless it affects their bottom line, because it's a profit-driven industry. So as long as they're making profit, and who's paying, right? Older people, parents, people with disposable income, not children, but it appeals to children. But what do children get? Children get ingrained with certain media messages, and then they become lifelong consumers of that message. Why do you think mass media has taken a more dominant role over the years? Well, it has, because it has. Society's agreed upon this. Technology makes it more accessible. Four words. And let me reread the question. Why do you think that mass communications media has taken a more dominant role over the years? Technology, access, popularity, affordability. All right, that's a great place to stop, and we'll pick this back up for maybe one final session after this.